More than 60 machine guns shooting out metal spikes. Too many, Jake concluded as they kept coming. While he would have loved to see Minaga burn through mana to keep the spell active, he knew that it was only a matter of time before he was hit, forcing him to make a difficult decision. Have to risk it. Rather than dodge, Jake charged forward. Minaga seemed pleased, but frowned slightly as Jake's body split into two. The spikes usually focused on one target, but with two, Minaga had to either spread them out more or choose to focus on one. Either case would be advantageous to Jake. Jake felt pleased with himself as he closed in with his eternal shadow 10 meters to his side. Yet, just as he began to feel this, his danger sense spiked. Every single formation behind Minaga exploded, each shooting out 7 or 8 metal spikes like a shotgun. Jake cursed as he tried to dodge and summon a stable arcane barrier. His eternal shadow also reacted fast, dodging many attacks, but was eventually hit and dispersed. Blood flew into the air as 3 metal spikes hit Jake. One hit his thigh, one his stomach, and one his shoulder, as he had angled himself to take the hits in the side. This was the least amount of damage he could see himself getting out of this pickle with. Before Minaga could do more, threads of arcane mana flew out of Jake's hand and wrapped around every metal spike to pull them out, still leaving him with 3 nasty holes.
Man, I wanted to say a quip, but the fact that you got out of that combo spell with so few injuries, yeah, you are definitely a cheat.
Says the unique lifeform who was born overpowered, Jake shot back, as he pulled out his bow and began shooting arrows alongside his words.
Says the bloodline patriarch,
answered Minaga, while he dodged the arrows or deflected them with his staves. Still just a human and not some darling of the multiverse, Jake said, as he managed to trick Minaga with a splitting arrow, getting a single one of them to hit him in the leg.
Oh, poor you, being one of the enlightened races with infinite potential and all the paths in the world open to you,
Minaga said, snorting as he pulled the arrow out on the off chance it had been primed to explode. It hadn't, but he played it safe. Jake smirked and retreated while shooting, wanting to get some distance from Minaga before his magic returned. I guess we are both suffering.
We do have it rough, the two of us. That we agree on. Of course, I have it harder, as I have to live up to my own greatness every day.
So humble, too. Jake smirked again as he used 2 one-steps to find a nice cluster of debris.
The humblest there is. In fact, I would argue I am the best at being humble in the entire multiverse,
Minaga joked as the 3 seconds passed, putting magic back on the menu. This once again put Jake on the back foot. Survival was the name of the game. He didn't want to risk another major spell, as even the normal casting was a bloody nightmare to keep up with. Not even Jake was capable of fully dodging everything. The passive barrier from the fully activated Arcane Awakening, coupled with his Scales of the Malefic Viper, did help a bunch with the larger magical attacks, but ultimately, Jake's lowest stat was still toughness. He was not built to take hits, but to avoid them. On the Labyrinth front, things were looking okay. They weren't overly large, but they would still take time to break out of. Sylphie used her speed to quickly look for an exit, and at least there were no traps or anything. She could also hear the whispers of the wind due to the lack of mist, allowing her to rapidly make progress. The Sword Saint noted that there was even lighting within the empty, grayish hallways of the labyrinth. It was ultimately just a damn maze you had to find your way out of, and the longer you took, the more fucked your party would become as you floated further and further into the emptiness of space. Dina further added that the entire place was shrinking slightly with time. This meant that the labyrinth became shorter and faster to do, but Jake also didn't want to know what would happen if it shrank too much. Getting crushed within a labyrinth cube did not sound like a nice way to go. As for the Fallen King, Well, Jake had a brief exchange with him, and they reached an agreement. Not dying while also not giving Minaga the chance or space to cast another major spell remained Jake's main focus as he slowly bought time. Minaga didn't seem overly stressed about finishing off Jake rapidly, though, and he knew why. His resources were dropping fast. Arcane Awakening was a massive drain on its own, and coupled with his need to constantly use one step, summon barriers, and regenerate his scales, it was obvious he would run out of energy sooner rather than later. Minaga gave off a vibe that suggested he didn't believe actually beating Jake could be worth it, so he kept up his constant barrage of spells, either waiting for him to mess up or to run out of stamina or mana. He acted as if everything was going as expected. Thus, Jake did something Minaga definitely had not seen coming. Lifting his hand to his face, he grasped his mask, pulled it off, and threw it toward the unique lifeform. His opponent dodged it, confused, then looked at Jake to discover that the mask had never left his face, yet an object had clearly just been thrown past him.
An illusion? No, that...
A wave of energy erupted behind Minaga as a golden claw lit up the horizon, striking him in the back and spraying blood. The Fallen King instantly materialized from the thrown mask, utilizing a property of the mask Jake had never used before. As per the description, the Fallen King has anchored his existence to this mask, and as its owner, you are the master, allowing you to summon the Fallen King to your location at any time. Jake viewed summoning the Fallen King as kind of rude, and it went against the agreement they had, but in this case, Jake gladly used it for their collective gain. With permission from the Fallen King, of course. What's more, this was something Minaga definitely couldn't predict, as Jake had never done it before.
Summoned? Wait.
Minaga found himself with the Fallen King on one side and Jake on the other, and both let loose. The unique lifeform struggled in that bad position and had to play defensively for a while, taking several wounds as he attempted to stabilize. Jake and the Fallen King were not going to let that happen. They both went all out. Pulling out an arrow of the ambitious hunter and rapidly charging arcane power shot, Jake released a devastating attack, while the Fallen King summoned a massive golden hammer that descended like judgment from the heavens. Combined with surprise and confusion, it was enough for Minaga to use his very first defensive combination spell. After putting his hands together, a giant metal sphere appeared all around him, and a field of swirling darkness soon appeared to consume it. This left him standing with a semi-transparent barrier that both the golden hammer and arrow failed to even impact. Both attacks simply sank into the darkness, never to be seen again. As for Minaga, well, he seemed far more interested in what had just happened with the Fallen King than the actual fight. He looked extremely curious and confused as he slowly floated down to the large central platform.
This doesn't make any sense. That kind of summoning must mean, you are bound to him. Oh, I get it. He killed you, and in order to survive, you chose to bind whatever vestiges of your soul remained to the records that would be transferred to the item you would drop, which you knew would be your mask, naturally leaving you utterly broken in the process. This was only made possible since you were the boss of a tutorial, meaning the records transference for the kill was increased. Of course, there would be no way for you to actually ever recover from that state, as that would require powers capable of restoring a true soul in lost records, unless the system decided to lend a hand, which I assume it did due to how perfect your resurrection was. Well, perfect besides you now being bound to Jake here, which, by the way, is also utterly insane.
Overall, Minaga's rant hit the nail on the head. When he pointed at Jake and prepared to continue, however, Jake had a thought. Using the golden mark, he quickly spread his idea while Minaga continued. When the dark defensive sphere disappeared, none of them attacked. He and the king watched Minaga walk around the large central platform.
Why insane, you might ask? Say, Jake, do you have any idea what it means for him to store his soul within the mask, which is in turn bound to you? It means he stored the entire concept behind his existence within you, within your records. Yet you weren't affected negatively in the least, which means your own records were not only equal but superior to his unique life forms, allowing you to utterly overpower him, especially considering this bond remains after his resurrection. If I had to wager a guess, you probably even hold influence over his life and death. Man, you really are utterly broken. Both of you, but in different ways. Man, I can see why Falas made you his chosen. You seem to have been a monster even in the tutorial, no doubt due to that bloodline of yours.
Minaga just kept talking as he looked deep in thought.
What's more, for a unique lifeform to willingly submit in such a fashion, no, is it even submission? Some kind of mutual understanding? Man, this is peculiar.
An understanding was reached, that is correct,
the Fallen King answered.
One of mutual respect between two opponents. I did what I had to in order to survive. Nothing more, nothing less.
Oh yeah, and your way of doing so was pretty damn impressive and probably bound to your unique skill in some fashion, Minaga said in a pondering tone. It isn't something one can just do, after all. Most wouldn't try either. Recovering itself was truly an impossibility, and I find it amazing that Jake even bothered bringing you back to life. The system doesn't like to give out items allowing someone to circumvent one of its rules, so it couldn't have been easy.
It did happen due to a system event, Jake confirmed.
I reckon so. Was it a direct request of the system? It sometimes likes to fulfill wishes, so to speak. Or perhaps it was an item of some kind. If you don't want to answer, that is perfectly fine.
I guess it isn't that big of a secret, Jake said, trying to look like he was thinking for a few seconds. Finally, he sighed. It was an item.
One-time use?
Minaga questioned curiously. Jake looked at the fallen king, who had now caught on. He also seemed to consider for a moment before saying,
You may answer.
Very well. Jake nodded and resigned himself to confirmation. It was one-time use, and I spent quite a staggering amount of credits on it.
Wait, someone was selling it? During a system event?
Minaga seemed even more intrigued. I apologize. It was during a system event where the system auctioned off items directly as part of a reward for doing another event well. Jake sighed loudly. I was definitely surprised when the system manifested itself physically like that just to sell items.
Oh, manifestations like that do happen, though they are very rare. Well, they are not rare for you as new initiates of the new universe, but for the rest of us, they are few and far between.
Truly. Have you encountered the system before in a physical form? Jake asked, looking surprised.
Of course I have. Duh.
Minaga laughed. Really? Under what circumstances?
Well, I probably shouldn't, but if you insist, I guess I could—
Wait! Minaga yelled in realization as he felt what had just happened. At once, all three labyrinth cubes flying through space broke open as Dina, the Sword Saint, and Sylphie coordinated their exits. They had surmised that Minaga would likely know the moment someone got out, so they had all waited right at the exit to emerge as one while Jake deployed a truly underhanded strategy. That's right, Jake smiled in triumph as the three auras approached, flying at full speed back toward the platform. I successfully got you monologuing.
You scoundrel! This is unethical. How dare you use my own extreme curiosity, vanity, and desire to hear my own voice against me?
A perfectly executed strategy. Jake grinned. He and the king had gotten some distance from the unique life form, with Jake standing on the platform below, ready to react to any attacks.
Damn it! I should have known. It was so obvious that you were just stalling.
Pulling out both staves, Minaga released a shockwave of energy towards Jake and the fallen king. The fallen king blocked the blow and was sent flying back for several kilometers, while Jake dodged to remain standing on the central platform.
Almost as if it was so damn obvious I saw right through it.
As Jake's danger sense erupted, he tried to retreat away from the central platform. Just as he did, a massive magic circle appeared all across it to release an enormous shockwave. In the empty space all around the platform formed what looked like millions of planes of glass reshuffling themselves. They created a barrier around the central platform, but it was not the usual kind of barrier. It was another fucking labyrinth. One that everyone, including the fallen king, was now outside of, trapping only 2 people inside. What's more, Jake could not resummon the fallen king. What's even more, far above, the constellations shifted, the stars seeming to resonate with the magic circle on the platform. It was only a matter of time before more of those sign beasts would appear. Minaga stood on the platform, smiling as he looked at Jake.
Guess it's still just the 2 of us, eh?
Jake looked at the unique life form and noticed the formation was still glowing along with the above constellation. The spell was active, a large combination spell. Without hesitation, Jake pulled out his bow and loosed an arrow. Minaga dodged as Jake released another, this one blocked by his staff. Jake kept shooting, while Minaga retreated for a bit before changing his strategy and charging at Jake with a staff in each hand. Jake's theory was confirmed, and he was ready. Beating Minaga with magic? No fucking shot. Without? Well, it was time to find out. Chapter 52. Nevermore. Of course there is one. Jake maintained distance as he continuously retreated and took potshots at Minaga, who had no way of fighting at long range without his magic. At the same time, Jake heard from the fallen king that the entire labyrinth Minaga had summoned seemed spatially expanded, making it a nightmare to get through. He did try to blast walls apart, and while he had some success, It appeared slower than simply rushing through as fast as possible. Jake did want to simply summon him again, but doing so was a huge strain on the fallen king. Doing it once was fine, but more than that could have less than desirable consequences, so he fought alone. Minaga handled Jake's barrage of arrows extremely well, but he still couldn't block everything. Jake had gotten good at shooting tricky arrows that curved to hit where the unique lifeform moved to dodge or looped around the staff raised to block it. His opponent was obviously also aware of this, as he stopped chasing and stood still while looking at Jake with raised eyebrows.
Heh, while I can't do normal magic right now, you do realize you are standing on the magic circle, right?
Minaga grinned as the ground below him began to glow, and the entire formation shifted. When Jake stepped, it felt like the entire world had become heavier, at least when it came to using one step. Space had been constricted, he realized. What's more, Minaga seemed to have slightly shrunken the arena, giving Jake less and less space to work with. Minaga once more gave chase, yet Jake was no longer able to teleport, making it significantly harder to get proper distance. 3 times, Jake barely avoided getting caught, and the 4th one forced him to switch away from his bow. Both Katars appeared as the nature of the battle changed. Jake dove into melee, dodging under a staff sweep to go for a stab. Minaga was quick and stepped back as he countered, yet Jake countered the counter, slamming the staff into the ground. He managed to land a quick stab on the unique lifeform's arm, but took an elbow strike in return, making him stumble back. Gritting his teeth, Jake re-engaged again, pushing the unique lifeform even more aggressively than before. His strikes were vicious, and Minaga found himself being slowly pushed back by Jake's ferocity. Several minor wounds were exchanged, but neither combatant could land any meaningful hits. Jake kept pressing, picking up speed as his Katars struck dozens of times a second, putting Minaga more and more on the defensive.
I do find it odd you are so focused on the bow. Not gonna lie, you strike me as more talented as a melee fighter,
Minaga said, trying and failing to hit Jake with his staff. With his second staff, he did manage to force Jake to disengage for a brief moment. Both of them jumped back, giving Minaga more space to talk.
It's like you've spent far more time training your melee capabilities than your skill with the bow. Don't get me wrong, you are mean with a bow too, but you don't exude the same kind of pressure as you do right now. This is like having a wild beast going crazy at you, yet without the usual downside of such a bestial fighting strategy due to your ridiculous reaction times and pure instinct.
As Minaga landed on the platform more than 50 meters away, Jake was already charging over. Preparing for the attack, Minaga continued,
I could see you walking the path without having ever encountered the bow, perhaps for the better. Or not. Who is to tell?
Jake kept sprinting, not commenting on anything Minaga said. He knew there was some truth to Minaga's words, but he didn't have the time or desire to think about things like that in the middle of a fight like this.
Also, you seem to be misunderstanding one thing. While it is true that I cannot use any magic right now,
Minaga lifted his staff above his head, where it began glowing with power. His aura spiked for a moment before he finished,
this isn't classified as magic.
Reacting to his danger sense, Jake leaped to the side just as Minaga smashed the staff down. The entire area he had just occupied exploded from the sheer force of the unique lifeform's swing. As his eyes landed on Minaga, the glow from his boosting skill seemed to change. Minaga smiled, leaned forward, and stepped. The ground erupted beneath his step, sending him flying straight toward Jake. Without hesitation, Jake bent his back to dodge a staff sweeping right over where his head had just been, a shockwave of pure force emanating in its wake. The other staff descended from above an instant later, and Jake barely managed to slip by it. He was still hit, however, when the ground once more erupted from the sheer power of the blow. As he flew through the air, he took out his bow and fired a single shot into Minaga's back, much to his opponent's annoyance. He also had a good idea why Minaga had suddenly gotten stronger. Pure stamina manipulation, Jake concluded, while blasting himself to the side using arcane mana to avoid landing on the ground again, as Minaga had already charged towards his estimated landing location. He changed course for Jake mid-charge, resulting in the two of them clashing once more, with Jake now purely on the defensive. Minaga had gotten stronger, faster, yet Jake did not surrender or even try to disengage. He welcomed the pressure, pushing himself further than before. He practically felt his own veins burning from arcane awakening as he did all he could to keep up with the unique life form. His mind was fully focused as he dodged. He read the flow of the fight, felt the power surging through his own body. He knew he needed to do something, wrest back some level of control, land a big hit, but he didn't have the tools to do so. He knew he lacked a skill for a situation like this, and descending Dark Arcane Fang just wouldn't cut it. The skill was difficult to use as he had to actively circumvent many of the skill's functions, such as requiring a downward thrust. That meant a longer activation time and less overall power. But if the skill wouldn't cut it, Jake would just have to make it into one that could. The current descending Dark Arcane Fang was fundamentally flawed. It relied on dark mana, an affinity he didn't really use for anything anymore and had replaced with curse energy when it came to eternal hunger. The entire method of delivering the blow was also flawed, as doing a downward thrust with a Katar was awkward at best and impossible at worst. So he rebuilt it from the bottom, taking inspiration from other skills and what changes he had already made to the skill after he began using Katars. There was nothing truly new, he just had to combine everything. Existing changes to Descending Fang, inspiration from his curse energy, from his fight with Sim Jake, from the power of the Black Point Blade, his own arcane mana, from everything he had done to better his melee skills. Eternal hunger slowly pulsed with energy as a dark mist surrounded the blade, but a faint layer of arcane energy covered it just as it appeared. Meanwhile, Jake only dodged and used the Black Point Blade as he prepared. Minaga didn't seem to have noticed anything, or at least he acted like he didn't. The exchanges continued until Jake saw his opportunity when Minaga tried a slightly wider than usual swing. Using Gaze of the Apex Hunter, he threw off Minaga's flow for a fraction of a second, long enough for him to dodge a blow and gain ample space to launch his attack. Jake stomped down, making the ground beneath him crack as he thrust Eternal Hunger forward. Minaga had not been ready when the Katar hit him in the side, Eternal Hunger glowing with a deep purple aura as the cursed arcane energy flooded into his body. Minaga's eyes shot open as the blade penetrated nearly all the way to the edge. He swung at Jake hard, missing but launching himself away as Jake got a system notification. Descending Dark Arcane Fang, rare. A fang that strikes from the darkness, clamping down with the fury of your arcane. Infuse your blade with a mixture of dark and arcane mana as you do a downward strike, significantly increasing damage done and penetrative power. Dark mana makes the wound harder to heal and drains energy until dispelled. Arcane mana creates a powerful coating and extends the edge while increasing all its basic capabilities. Damage improved further if the weapon is benefiting from Twin Fang style. Adds a bonus to the effect of agility, strength, and intelligence when using Descending Dark Arcane Fang. Upgrades to Piercing Cursed Arcane Fang, Epic. A fang born from darkness, now having embraced the power of curses, kept in control by the hunter's arcane mana. Infuse your weapon with a mixture of curse energy and arcane energy as you perform a thrusting strike, significantly increasing penetrative power and damage done. The curse energy will linger in any created wounds, the effect dependent on the nature of the curse energy applied. Arcane mana creates a powerful coating and extends the edge while keeping the curse energy contained. Significantly more powerful when used with Eternal Hunger. Damage improved further if the weapon is benefiting from Fang of Man. Adds a bonus to the effect of agility, strength, and intelligence when using Piercing Cursed Arcane Fang. Jake briefly glanced at the notification as Minaga landed a dozen or so meters away, a nasty wound glowing with an eerie light in his side. What's more, Jake felt a brief burst of revitalization as Eternal Hunger fed on the energies of the unique life form. He also took this brief chance to chug down a stamina potion, seeing as he was below 15%, and it would soon become a major problem. Keeping up with the unique life form was not easy at all. Minaga took a solid second to address the wound. Jake felt him flood it with vital energy, rapidly eliminating the curse energy. Jake used the moment to properly observe his foe. Despite his high-energy attitude and unbothered demeanor, Minaga looked like a mess by now. His entire body was covered in wounds and dozens of arrow holes, not to mention the deep claw mark all across his back or the frightening cauterized wound across his chest. Moreover, poison had repeatedly built up within the unique life form. His soul was also partly damaged from the king's attacks, and Jake wouldn't be surprised if a few seeds from Dina had managed to take root inside of him. All in all, Jake felt that Minaga did not have that long left. He was on his last legs for sure.
I said it. Way nastier as a melee fighter, Minaga said, not moving to attack again. Jake knew why. Another aura entered the arena. The fallen king had finally broken through. Sylphie was close behind, and Dina and the Sword Saint were quickly making their way through the labyrinth, likely to arrive within the next half a minute. Minaga seemed to realize fighting the king and Jake without his magic wasn't a good idea. He looked at them both and sighed. Oh well,
Minaga said, his voice echoing all around them.
I guess it's soon time for the grand finale. Just a bit more. And there we go. I am now down to only 10% health.
Minaga lifted his hand, and a barrier appeared around him. Jake had no confidence in breaking it, even if he really wanted to try. He had a very bad feeling that the fight wasn't as over as he had just begun to believe. The formation below him on the platform stopped glowing, and the entire labyrinth disappeared in an instant. Dina, the Sword Saint, and Sylphie appeared in the middle of nothing and quickly worked to get their bearings, and then their party began regrouping. Dina went straight for Jake and hit him with a green bolt of lightning, sending a wave of pure life energy through him. It was probably needed. His health pool was not looking good. Fighting Minaga alone for so long was not healthy, not to mention the constant drain on his health from Arcane Awakening. Jake and the others kept looking on as Minaga smiled.
Remember when I called the third phase the final one? Yeah, well, what good boss doesn't have a secret hidden phase only activated if certain conditions are met?
Of course there is one, Jake thought, just as he noticed something. The constellations above were still glowing. They were never to summon more beasts. That entire thing was just misdirection. The realization came just as Minaga spread out his hands, and the entire cosmos lit up. The stars above shone brighter than ever before, all the constellations releasing beams of light that descended upon Minaga to grow his aura.
Hidden final phase, Cosmic Minaga!
An explosion of bright light blinded them all for a brief moment, and then the unique lifeform was revealed. His entire body was glowing, the constellations covering his body like tattoos. His form emanated a staggering amount of power. Upon feeling Minaga's aura, Jake knew that this ability was similar to his own Arcane Awakening, and that it overflowed the body with far more energy than it could handle. Even now, Minaga's wounds worsened by the second. The problem was what he could do until he ran out of power. "Finish him quickly!" Jake practically yelled through the golden mark as he pulled out his bow. The others reacted instantly too. Attacks flew out from all over as Minaga looked at them. Lifting his hand, he released a shockwave that blasted them all back. But Jake felt there was more in it. A faint layer of dust had been included with the blast and was now floating in space. Jake didn't even have to warn the others. They all reacted defensively as every single speck of dust exploded. While they were still reeling back, beams of light shot down like falling stars, followed by actual meteors. None of them held anything back as the cosmos lit up from their own respective magics. Minaga seemed to only grow more and more powerful with every passing second, his aura growing and making the final threat clear.
"We need to kill him now, or I fear he will detonate,"
Dina warned through the golden mark. Their attacks flew at Minaga with this knowledge in mind. Jake landed several arrows as the unique lifeform simply stood there, blocking the hits or tanking them with his body while the sky itself seemed to fall upon them. Pillars of light flashed down, forcing them to dodge or be struck with attacks even the fallen king could barely handle, not to mention the constant meteor shower. As the situation was turning desperate, the Sword Saint proposed a solution.
"I can use my transcendence fully. However, that..."
"Don't. Not yet." Jake looked at Minaga and steeled himself. "I got one more trick ready. If that doesn't work, feel free. However, I will need a moment to land a hit."
"Simply give the word,"
the fallen king said.
"I will do my best,"
Dina added. Jake nodded to himself and prepared a final trump card he had readied for this fight against Minaga. Another kind of attack he had never used before, as it relied on something he seriously doubted the unique lifeform could predict. With no hesitation, Jake took out 5 poison bottles and threw their contents into his mouth. Then he charged Minaga, his party ready behind him. Chapter 53. Nevermore, a grand achievement. Jake charged forward to the updated rhythm of Minaga's boss theme. It had once more shifted in this so-called final hidden phase, and the stars also seemed to pulse with the beat. The number of attacks descending from above was staggering, and only Jake had a chance to even approach the unique lifeform without having to take several hits on the way. Vaulting over a meteor, Jake got closer, yet didn't dare use one step due to how warped space was. The meteors clearly had some kind of strong gravitational pull. Minaga raised a hand and released a large beam toward Jake, forcing him to dodge the energy as well as a meteor headed straight for his new position. Before it had a chance to hit, a crescent wave of water cut it apart, allowing Jake to keep going without slowing down too much. Jake focused on what was inside of his mouth as he got closer. He was swishing the liquid around, letting it burn his throat while it mixed and creating a truly unstable amalgamation. Necrotic poison, hemotoxin, sleeping night toxin, eth-soul toxin, and finally his best neurotoxin. All of it haphazardly tossed together and combined inside his mouth. He knew this mix wouldn't actually work. It would be impossible for him to turn it into something useful unless he had help, a way to combine it using powers far beyond what he was capable of. So Jake pulled out the final item. Vision's Venom of the Malefic Viper, Legendary. A single droplet of pure, concentrated energy and records related to the Malefic Viper. Significantly increases the potency of any toxin it is mixed with. Using this venom during the creation of any alchemical toxin increases the chance of activating Malefic Viper's poison, empowering the final product with the records of the Malefic Viper. If used by the Chosen himself, the activation of Malefic Viper's poison is ensured if the created item is applicable. It was a gift from the much-hated statue Felix had crafted, but Jake could not deny the item's power. He quickly pulled out the single drop and threw it into his mouth, then used concoct poison on the amalgamation. Right as he did so, something descended. A power far surpassing anything else momentarily appeared within the arena, and the aura of what was inside Jake's mouth changed. It became something that should not exist, but through the power of that single drop, it did. Right as he knew it had worked, Jake encased all the liquid in stable arcane mana and created an orb. Malefic Viper's poison has been activated. The transcendent power of the Malefic Viper has forcefully increased the rarity of your creation to Ancient, increasing all effects substantially. You have successfully crafted Volatile Malefic Soulbane Poison, Ancient. A new kind of creation has been made. Bonus experience earned. Moving to only around 100 meters from Minaga, Jake sent his ready signal through the golden mark. Even if the poison was currently being held together by the power of Malefic Viper's poison, it would soon break apart. Reacting to the signal, Sylphie made her entrance as a light green breeze. She accelerated Jake further and caused several meteors to change trajectory and miss him. In the very next moment, a green bullet descended with unprecedented speed, heading straight for Minaga. Her green shield was active as she barreled through dozens of meteors, her body burning with energy. Minaga looked up at the bird as she met the barrier protecting his body. A massive explosion sent a green burst of wind flying everywhere, blasting Sylphie back. Her body was destroyed as she tumbled through space, forcing her to transform into wind. She was heavily injured, but she had accomplished her goal as she flew back toward Dina and the others. The barrier protecting Minaga was filled with cracks, and large streams of water shot through the cosmos as a voice echoed, "Glimpse of spring, erosion." The Sword Saint's stream of water impacted the barrier, stabbing through every single obstacle in the way and disintegrating everything it touched. He could not move in closer, but his Transcendence-empowered erosion stab still managed to finally break the barrier. It shattered like glass, making Minaga stumble back and even leaving another nasty wound on his chest. While he was without defenses, Dina and the Fallen King made their move. Vines sprang up from 3 places on Minaga's very own body, rapidly spreading and attempting to restrain him. At the same time, a golden aura descended upon the entire battlefield as the king unleashed a powerful suppressive force. Minaga froze, unable to move, and Jake closed in while feeling hairline fractures spreading across the mask from the fallen king exerting himself. Despite everything, Minaga was not entirely hopeless. He made eye contact with Jake as powerful pressure descended from the stars. A deep rumble went through the arena, and every single star shot a concentrated light beam straight toward Jake. His only direction for dodging was backward, but that was never going to happen. He kept going as the beams arrived, maintaining eye contact with Minaga. Time slowed down from moment of the Primal Hunter activating, and Jake used that slowed down time to cross the final distance while placing the orb of stable arcane mana in his hand, also holding Eternal Hunger as he appeared right in front of Minaga. Time resumed just as Jake unleashed every shred of his hunting momentum in a full-force forward stab. Piercing Fang empowered the strike further as he aimed for Minaga's stomach, and the unique lifeform was not able to react in time. The orb with the Malefic Soulbane poison was firmly grasped in his hand as it pierced Minaga's stomach, allowing him to embed his entire hand before the unique lifeform had any chance to respond. Without hesitation, Jake used his other Katar to sever the hand inside Minaga. Simultaneously, Dina's vines wrapped around his body and pulled him backward out of another barrage of light beams. Minaga stared as Jake flew away before looking down at the hole in his stomach. Jake reached out with his hand, which began to glow with a familiar dark green light of touch of the Malefic Viper. He then pushed the unstable amalgamation over the edge. The stable arcane energy keeping it trapped also disappeared with a mental command, and the poison was unleashed.
Well, shit.
The unique lifeform erupted in a dark green aura as the poison shot through his body, making his entire form distort, as if his soul shape was trying to escape its physical confines. His appearance warped for a second, reality seemed to flash, and the stars above blinked with uneven light as the constellation tattoos on Minaga's body broke apart one after another. As his soul shape shattered, his left arm rotted into black dust within a second, followed by one of his legs, while the rest of his body convulsed. Suddenly, he stopped contorting. He seems to have a final moment of clarity before grinning widely. One last time, he stared straight at Jake and the others with a taunting look, while showing off his usual goofy smile.
You should know by now, I always go out with a bang.
With those words, Minaga went supernova. Jake's eyes opened wide as he crossed his arms and summoned an arcane barrier. The shockwave reached him first, making the entire barrier crack, and the blast itself followed soon after. Jake saw nothing but pure white light as the barrier broke, and the scales covering his body crackled and broke, until suddenly the pressure was gone. A faint green color instead appeared, and Jake was dragged all the way back to his party by Bobo. Meanwhile, Dina stood holding her staff high, her entire body glowing with green light, as a massive projection of a tree covered all 5 of them. The supernova washed over the tree, the projecting bark burned and peeling away as the Sword Saint and Fallen King tried to help by summoning 2 barriers. Jake also quickly joined them, and even Sylphie tried to help. Heat began to enter the protective zone within the tree trunk, just as the blast subsided and the cosmos became still. You have slain Minaga, level 275. Bonus experience earned for killing an enemy above your level. Right as the notification came, the projection of the tree faded, and as Dina's transformed state disappeared, she fell over to the side. The Sword Saint was quick to catch her, but Jake still stared at where Minaga had been. There was nothing left but a few broken pieces of rock from the central platform floating through space. Even most of the stars were gone or dimmed to a level where one could barely see them. Jake finally allowed himself to calm down when his intuition told him the danger was over, and he let his own arcane awakening fade, causing weakness to flood his body. Turning to his party, it quickly became clear they were all in a horrid state. The Sword Saint looked utterly haggard, having used his glimpse of spring twice in one fight. Dina was unconscious, so she naturally wasn't in good condition, and the Fallen King stood with a mask that had quite a few cracks in it, giving off a weaker and far more unstable aura than before. Sylphie was the one who'd come out the best, though her energy reserves were close to 0. As for Jake himself, well, he definitely could have been better. We won. Jake smiled to the others just as the entire space shifted, and he felt himself being teleported before appearing within an in-between room surrounded by his 4 party members. Being confirmed safe dispelled a lot of the lingering tension from the fight, and Jake felt everyone relax. The Sword Saint quickly took Dina and put her on one of the sofas in the room to relax, while Jake dragged himself over to a chair.
That idea of yours was reckless, the Sword Saint said, as he looked at Jake and nodded. But it worked, so good job. A better solution than mine, as I feel uncertain I could even have accomplished finishing him that quickly, even if I went all out.
Jake smiled lightly and leaned back. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Sylphie had also slowly flown over and landed on Jake's chest. He now held the tired bird, who seemed more than happy to just snuggle up to him. She had done a good job and deserved some head pats. Even the Fallen King had taken a seat in one of the chairs as he worked on his unstable aura. Jake knew he had severely overexerted himself with that final attack of his. It had been far more than just an attack to stop Minaga from moving. It had weakened his soul and made it far more susceptible to Jake's poison. After they had been sitting there for nearly a minute, they finally got notifications that felt pretty damn delayed. Jake read the first 2 and was a bit disappointed, but then he remembered the Demon Lord situation and continued, grinning from ear to ear when he saw the 3rd one. 40th floor completed, 400 Nevermore points earned. Bonus objective completed. Do not allow a single party member to be defeated during the battle, 0 of 5, 1,000 Nevermore points earned. Grand achievement earned. Complete the True Ending event by defeating a fully empowered Minaga in an exemplary manner. 10,000 Nevermore points earned. Due to completing a grand achievement, you will receive a 25% multiplier to all Nevermore points at the final calculation.
That is quite something, the Sword Saint muttered as he read the notifications.
Jake could only agree as he stared at the grand achievement, which he hadn't even known was a thing. 10,000 Nevermore points was already a shitload, but the 25% bonus was massive. It also answered why getting to the top of the leaderboards was so coveted. Feats like this grand achievement were things only the true top elite could ever accomplish, and with how massive the bonus was, Jake reckoned it was pretty much mandatory if you wanted to aim for the top. Making up for a 25% deficit seemed damn near impossible, and it did make him wonder if there were other such multipliers.
A hard-fought battle rewarding an achievement I doubt many can accomplish. A level 275 unique life form is no easy foe to defeat,
the Fallen King said, having managed to mostly stabilize, though he did remain quite weakened. It didn't strike Jake as the kind of weakness that would disappear within a few hours, or even days either. Sylphie lightly screeched in agreement as she looked up at Jake with begging eyes, making him pat her again and reaffirm how good of a job she had done. Dina was still down for the count, as she had clearly gone above and beyond by blocking that damn supernova, which Jake did think was kind of overkill. Using his brief moment of respite, Jake decided to check another important thing: level ups. He instantly saw he had gotten 1 level from the poison, which was honestly fair, given that he had kind of cheated when he made it. Ding! Profession Heretic Chosen Alchemist of the Malefic Viper has reached level 227. Stat points allocated, plus 35 free points. As for his reward for killing Minaga, well, Jake couldn't really complain. Ding! Class Arcane Hunter of Horizon's Edge has reached level 222. Stat points allocated, plus 50 free points. Ellipsis. Ding! Class Arcane Hunter of Horizon's Edge has reached level 225. Stat points allocated, plus 50 free points. Ding! Race Human C has reached level 224. Stat points allocated, plus 45 free points. Ellipsis. Ding! Race Human C has reached level 226. Stat points allocated, plus 45 free points. 4 levels from killing Minaga was a lot, but also not really a lot, considering how much stronger he had been. Had Jake won the fight alone, he reckoned he would have gained at least 10 levels, not that he believed he could have won alone. Dina stirred soon after Jake was done looking at his levels, her eyes shooting open. She rapidly sat up while looking around, and before any of them could say anything, Bobo seemed to inform her of the situation. She smiled.
We won.
I already said that, Jake said, smirking in response as he gave her a thumbs up. You came in clutch towards the end. Great job. Dina just nodded, but before she could say anything, well...
Man, I sure did a number on you all, huh?
A voice echoed as an all-too-familiar figure popped right into the room with a big smile on his face. Dina jumped slightly as Jake turned to look at the newcomer who had just popped up, and he instantly noticed this wasn't the same Minaga as the one they had just fought. Minaga, level 349. Please tell me this isn't some final super hidden phase, Jake said, sighing as he looked at the unique life form.
Would you like for it to be?
The unique life form grinned. Jake stared for a second and then sighed, doing something he very rarely did, turning down a fight. Fuck that. Minaga shrugged.
To be fair, it wouldn't be a fight even if you were all in peak condition.
True. Jake nodded. Should we apologize for killing you, by the way?
Nah, it's all good. What's a bit of murder between friends?
Minaga waved him off.
Nice touch there at the end, by the way.
Was that a touch of the Malefic Viper pun?
I can neither confirm nor deny,
the unique life form said, smiling jokingly before he suddenly turned extremely serious.
By now I guess some of you have guessed why I am here. That's right, it is related to loot. But...
Minaga seemed incredibly conflicted as he let out a big sigh and sat down.
I must apologize for something. All this time I have been deceiving you all, and it is only fair I make this confession. You may not believe it, but I'm actually a god.
An absolutely shocking revelation. Chapter 54. Nevermore, Minaga's Big Secret and Rewards. Minaga's absolutely shocking reveal left them all dumbstruck for a moment. Jake was the first to act amazed. I cannot believe that the Dungeon Master, who refers to primordials by their names, created an entire section of Nevermore, displayed skills above anything a mortal possibly could while sparring the Sword Saint, and has acted like a semi-divine being this whole time was actually a god, he said, with utter befuddlement. Where were the signs?
I know, and I do feel genuinely apologetic that I had to keep this secret, but I feared it would impact you negatively if you knew from the beginning I was truly a god,
Minaga said, shaking his head. Could the fact that you can create different avatars have been a clue? Jake questioned himself.
Oh, to be fair, that wasn't an avatar. In fact, I don't make avatars.
Minaga waved off the notion.
The entire sentiment of avatar creation just seems so unnecessary when you are Minaga.
I do want to ask you what you mean by that, considering it is clearly a leading question, but I would honestly rather wait and see the sweet loot you promised, Jake said. Minaga looked slightly disappointed.
Sure you don't want to know my big secret? It isn't actually a secret, mind you, as it's something everyone who knows about me is aware of, but I still like to call it my big secret for sentimental reasons, since it was a big secret once upon a time. Back when I was immortal, that is. You know, because I am no longer immortal now, being a god and all.
Alien stared inquisitively at Jake. Loot first, Jake insisted.
It's considered customary to be super respectful to gods, you know.
And even more customary for loot to drop after you beat a dungeon, yet here we are, Jake masterfully countered.
Damn loot goblin,
the unique life form grumbled. By the way, why do you keep your voice infused with willpower even now?
Because I am a god and it makes me appear more dignified yet intimidating,
he answered.
But seeing as you don't seem to respect the culture of the multiverse, I guess that sentiment is wasted on you.
Sorry, I guess. Jake shrugged, unbothered.
Just for that, you will be the last one to get your loot,
Minaga said with an evil grin.
Wait, that isn't fair. Nope, I already decided, so get in the back of the line and watch me shower your party in good stuff before you are allowed to get anything,
Minaga said, having grasped victory in their conversation.
Because that's right, you all get one reward each. Usually you can't give out so many items at once, but that is why I made it so the last 5 floors didn't give anything to increase the reward given here. And man, did you hit the jackpot, as I got some real good stuff prepared.
They all nodded along as Minaga decided to turn to the fallen king first.
I am starting with you, as quite frankly, what you get is the most boring out of everyone. Well, I call it boring, but I doubt you will complain.
With those words, he pulled out a deep blue glowing orb. The moment it appeared, Jake felt the rush of energy from it, and the enormous pressure it seemed to exude on its surroundings. Upon using Identify, he quickly understood what it was. Minaga's soul core, unique. The soul core of the slain C-grade unique lifeform known as Minaga. This soul core contains a significant amount of records related to the unique lifeform and has many alchemical uses. Directly consuming the soul core will lead to unexpected effects. The records and energies within are enhanced through unknown means, making the soul core even more potent. It was true that, in Jake's eyes, the reward didn't look that special, but based on the fallen king's reaction, it was clearly something he wanted very badly. He did look confused, though.
This item could only appear if you had truly died, but...
the fallen king said. Yet he nevertheless accepted the orb, not caring about the pride he'd shown earlier when he borderline refused to even talk to Minaga.
See, I wanted to tell you why creating this item is possible for me, but Jake here refused to let me explain my big secret, so I can't,
Minaga said, with a big sigh as he threw a glance at Jake. Fine, Jake relented.
Great!
Minaga grinned as he cleared his voice and made his second grand declaration of the day.
I can create clones of myself.
Dina said, somewhat nervously.
I think most people learn to do that at some point.
I don't think you understand,
Minaga said.
I make actual clones.
Dina seemed confused, and Jake also wasn't sure what he was getting at.
Can you elaborate?
The Sword Saint questioned. Minaga smiled, very satisfied with having piqued their curiosity.
When people usually create alternative versions of themselves, it is through pouring items into making a puppet, creating an avatar that holds a portion of your full power, or maybe just a projection with no real power besides a bit of mental energy. I do neither. I create a second version of myself, independent from any of the others. In power, soul, existence, and records.
Minaga smiled again.
The only thing linking us is our minds, and we are all still the same, even if we stand independently. So yes, the Minaga you killed was truly me. A clone of me, anyway.
That is not a possible skill,
the fallen king began.
Unless it is your unique skill, but even so, it seems too powerful. It breaks conventions.
You know as well as I that the unique skills of us unique life forms go beyond the rules of the multiverse and are pretty much just transcendent skills that aren't actually classified as transcendent skills due to being granted by the system. We are living anomalies, after all. But there is some truth to what you said. It is too powerful, hence its limitations. Only a certain number of Minagas can exist at once, though I can make more if they are lower-level clones. Oh, and one other minor detail. I don't have any skills besides that one.
Wait, no skills? Jake questioned. What do you mean by that?
That my status screen has one skill and that I never got any other. Okay, that is a lie, as I technically have some other skills, but I never had a single skill selection in my life, and everything I do is purely free-form magic. The skills I do have are general utility stuff everyone else also has, though I never did get identified, so that one is a bit of a bummer. Took a long time to make my own version without a skill.
Then was it one of your created clones we fought just now? The Sword Saint asked.
Yep, and you did kill it for real,
Minaga confirmed.
It is no different than if you had truly killed a unique life form at level 275, because you did.
I see, the Sword Saint said, nodding. I presume the knowledge and experience of this clone came from the original body.
Another misunderstanding.
Minaga smiled.
There is no original body. In fact, the very first Minaga died only in B grade. There is no original. There are only many iterations of me out there. There is only Minaga.
Huh, Jake muttered as he frowned. How exactly does...
Nope, we are done talking about that topic now that I got you interested,
Minaga said with an evil smile.
You said you wanted loot first, so I am just obliging.
He then turned to the dryad in the room before Jake could protest.
Next up is Dina. I must confess that you impressed me a lot, as you even managed to block my Minaga self-destruct attack, though it did seem to take quite a toll. Anyway, I thought about it a lot, and your control is truly impeccable. The problem is what you control. Your vines are strong, but I feel like you need more quality over quantity with them, as only the ones summoned directly from your guardian have any real oomph. While I cannot directly tell you what to do or how to improve, I can give you a little something that could help you. Even if you decide to use a reward for something else, that is all fair, as quite frankly, this little thing will be a huge boost no matter what, if you successfully learn from it.
Minaga then took out an odd wooden box. Dina looked at it for a while before she accepted and opened it. Right as she did, the entire room was filled with a green aura, and Jake felt all of the mana in the room being replaced. Projections of trees appeared everywhere around them, and moss began growing on the furniture from the sheer density and power of the nature mana. Jake identified the small item within the box before she quickly closed it again. Refined ancestral branch of the Emerald Forest, mythical. A wooden branch from one of the ancestral trees found within the world wonder known as the Emerald Forest. This forest contains immense power and records related to the concepts of nature and life, with this branch containing some of the essences of the Emerald Forest. Through unknown means, the branch has been further refined, making the energy within far more manageable to absorb. Unknown alchemical uses. Jake was taken aback the second he saw the rarity tag, and Dina was also looking at Minaga like he was insane.
This is... Right, probably should give an explanation, Minaga said. The Emerald Forest is the world wonder of the fourth universe, a giant forest filled with creatures starting at A grade. Deeper within, you will find beings with the power to rival gods, and in the deepest parts, god kings don't even dare set foot. I took that branch pretty far inside of the forest, and made some improvements so you can actually use it. It's a really good thing, and I know that your granddad has spent quite some time within this forest.
Isn't this too much? Dina questioned while just staring at the box.
Nope, it's just enough. Moving on to my fellow swordsman. Your reward is rather self-explanatory, so here you go.
Minaga took out a disc and threw it casually to the Sword Saint. Jake used Identify on it mid-air. Minaga's Sword Projection Formation Disc, mythical. A formation created by the unique life form Minaga himself, infused with his soul and essence. The user can infuse energy into the formation disc to summon a projected arena, including a corporeal clone of Minaga wielding a sword. The formation takes approximately 30 minutes to activate, and any disturbances will interrupt the process. Reabsorbing the formation into the formation disc is instant. The soul within the formation has a limited lifespan and can only be summoned for a total of 1,000 hours before permanently dispersing, rendering the sword projection formation useless. The summoned projection will always be the same level as the user. Requirements? Soulbound. The Sword Saint looked at the item and smiled before he stood up and bowed. Thank you for continuing your teachings. Minaga waved him off.
I like good students, and that was the best gift I could get one, as you don't look like you need any equipment. There really isn't much to say, as I created it myself, so you know it is damn awesome. Though it did take a sacrificial ritual using one of my clones, so that was kind of fun. Anyway, moving on to the little feather ball.
Without waiting, Minaga took out what looked like a flower crown, but on second glance, Jake saw it was more of a nest. It looked incredibly odd, and though a light green wind seemed to surround it, compared to the other items, this one had no fearsome aura. Using Identify, Jake wasn't quite sure what to think. Dreamy Embrace of the Benevolent Sylph, mythical. An item created by a particularly benevolent sylph who loved all those who, like her, were loved by the wind.
allows the user to submerge their soul into the dreamy embrace of the nest and enter a small, simulated world created by the item's creator. While within the simulated world, the user may experience the true winds of this benevolent sylph, taking inspiration and seeking guidance. However, should the user not be loved by the wind, or the remnant will of the sylph not take a liking to them, the dream may become a nightmare, and the sylph less than benevolent. Requirements: soulbound. Sylphie looked at the thing for a bit before jumping out of Jake's arms and hopping over as Minaga placed the item on the floor. The bird stared down at it inquisitively while Minaga explained,
Now, not gonna lie, this item was part of a series of 9 created by a powerful sylph before she died as a final gift to the world. However, do not think that in any way makes it less impressive. I do also feel like I need to add that out of those 9, 5 have been bound and used by others so far, and this resulted in 4 of those dying from the sylph within the dream not being a fan. So yeah, a lot of people think they are cursed, but I got a good feeling the sylph will be more than happy with you.
Minaga then slightly nudged the nest closer to Sylphie. The hawk kept looking at it for a moment, before screeching and putting it into her little vest's spatial storage. With the item safely put away, she hopped back to Jake.
Now you, Jake,
Minaga began.
Sadly, I also have to give you something, and man, you are truly difficult to give anything to. Unlike the Sword Saint here, giving you a practice partner or something akin to that could potentially do more harm than good, not to mention risking Velas breathing down my neck if I go against any of his intentions. But you do definitely need to work on your archery. Anyway, that is beside the point. I also don't like to just give equipment, as we all know that stuff becomes useless just as you begin to use it. You really had me racking my brains, you know, until I remembered a special something. Well, this doesn't really help make you stronger. It does assist you in potentially becoming so in the future. Plus, it is something Velas is fine with you getting, so a big bonus in favor of giving it to you there.
Minaga took out an odd item. It looked like an urn of sorts and didn't give off any special aura, but Jake still felt like the item was far from ordinary. Using Identify, he was not sure what to think or say when he saw the description. Soul Flames. Chapter 55. Nevermore. Cradle. Soul Flames were something Jake had pushed to the back of his mind ever since he first learned about them. Primarily because in learning about them, he'd learned how screwed he was if he wanted a soul flame that fit him, and since replacing one was incredibly difficult, he had just resigned himself to do without for the foreseeable future. He was aware that having a soul flame that fit you was strictly better than not having one. However, having a soul flame not suited for your path was worse than none at all. The issue with Jake was his arcane affinity. Soul flames were created from freak accidents where mana of a certain affinity gathered in an area and an elemental was about to be born, but for some reason this process failed and mutated, resulting in a half-born elemental only retaining a bit of spirituality. This effectively made a soul flame a half-elemental, half-natural treasure. This meant Jake's only option if he wanted a soul flame was to artificially create an environment for one to be born, or wait till he got strong enough to influence huge areas passively with his mere presence and records, resulting in his arcane affinity appearing naturally throughout the multiverse, thus turning it into a true affinity. Even then, the circumstances in which Jake's affinity would appear were probably few and far between, so Jake had just assumed he was fucked if he wanted to get lucky and find a soul flame. So, for Minaga to offer him a treasure related to soul flames, Jake truly had no idea what to think as he read the description of the item. Cradle of Soul's Kindling, mythical. The cradle in which a flame may be kindled as it awakens its own spirituality. Nascent soul flames of hundreds of affinities burn within the internal space of the cradle, experiencing a cycle of life and death as they struggle and absorb one another while growing in power, waiting for one of them to ascend to the world outside. Only a single soul flame can truly be born from the cradle. The item is destroyed upon extraction, with all other soul flames having become fuel for the chosen one. The cradle can be infused with energies to sustain and influence the internal world. The internal world of the cradle cannot be entered by any being with a true soul, and any true souls born within will immediately find themselves destroyed, their energies further nurturing the cradle. Requirements: soulbound. "This is," Jake muttered as he looked at the urn that he guessed was made out of some ceramic material, though it was far from fragile. Jake doubted anyone present, including the peak C-grade Minaga, could even leave a mark on it. Minaga held it out, and Jake tentatively accepted it, not exactly sure what he was dealing with even after reading the description. Not because he didn't understand, but because it just felt too good? Convenient? Jake wasn't sure.
I noticed you didn't have a soul flame, which is honestly pretty odd considering you are the C-grade chosen of the Malefic Viper. At least I thought so at first. The problem with people like you, who are so heavily reliant on the one affinity that cannot be found in the wild, is that no soul flames can be found either. At least, not before you get a lot stronger and create a special environment to nurture one. Or cheat using an item like the cradle.
Giving his judgmental tone, it was clear that the explanation was more for the other four than Jake himself. Will I be able to create a soul flame related to my arcane affinity using this? Jake questioned. From what I was told, it usually takes a very long time for one to form.
Of course you can form one. That is why I gave it to you. Duh,
Minaga said, sounding almost offended.
After you bind the cradle, just send in a lot of mana and keep feeding it once in a while to influence the environment within. You are ultimately still relying on pure chance that a soul flame with your arcane affinity is born and then manages to rise toward the top, but the more time passes, the more attuned the cradle should become to you. It isn't a quick and easy guarantee, but it is borderline the best solution you will ever find for a C grade, and that cradle is worth more than you can imagine. Not gonna lie, the other stuff I gave out is good, but the cradle is probably the most valuable if we go by pure resale value, as it is rather unique. Way more unique than the actual unique soul core I gave my fellow unique life form, though I did make up for that by actively empowering that core.
Huh. Jake nodded as he inspected the cradle. He knew that getting a soul flame couldn't be that easy, and it seemed he was right, as even the cradle had a strong element of luck if he wanted to create an arcane soul flame. However, it would undoubtedly save him a shitload of time. As Minaga had mentioned, he would have had to set up a special environment to nurture one, which he had planned on doing at some point, but this cradle made that unnecessary.
Also, since you can only ever extract one soul flame from the cradle, only go for the one with good quality, alright?
Almost scoldingly, Minaga added,
It would be a damn waste if you decided to take out an elementary or even low-tier soul flame.
Jake nodded along to the words. Yeah, definitely not gonna accept anything below a pinnacle tier soul flame. Soul flames ranged in quality, with the categories consisting of elementary, low tier, mid tier, high tier, pinnacle tier, and supreme. Elementary were ones that barely passed as soul flames, yet were primed for growth, while supreme soul flames were the best that one could get, bar none. The reason Jake wanted at least a pinnacle tier one was due to the relative ease of raising a pinnacle soul flame to a supreme soul flame. Relative did a lot of heavy lifting in this case, as it was still bloody hard, while raising a soul flame of an even lower tier would be borderline impossible and more akin to gambling than anything else. Getting a good soul flame right off the bat was incredibly important due to their semi-permanent status. A soul flame Jake got in C grade would stick with him for the rest of his life and grow with him forever, so if he got a bad one, he would have to either accept mediocrity or spend way more resources than anyone would find reasonable to upgrade the one he had. In either case, Jake sure as hell wasn't ever going to fuse with a low-level soul flame. He was way too much of a spoiled chosen for that. Naturally, soul flames were still more complicated than simply being split into these quality tiers, but it was a good estimate. Assessing a soul flame's quality was relatively simple, as it was just a question of records, and Jake knew that one could easily distinguish good and bad soul flames just using Identify. At least you could become able to. Jake didn't know if he currently could, but maybe with sagacity?
Hey, is he totally spacing out right now, or is it just me?
Jake vaguely heard Minaga whisper to the Sword Saint while throwing glances his way. The old man smiled.
He is simply stunned by your generosity.
Minaga nodded.
That makes total sense. I am stunningly generous.
Sorry for actually thinking about my reward in depth, Jake said, faking offense.
Oh, sorry, just not used to seeing you think, I guess.
Minaga shrugged.
Glad to see you unlock that ability.
I do wonder about something, Jake began, doing that thinking thing again to completely change the topic. Why did you have a cooldown period after each of your combination spell casts? Is it some kind of special application of magic to make it stronger, or do you overload your body or something? I found it odd, especially considering it was the same amount of time every time. Well, there is also one more option for why the cooldown was there, but Minaga grinned.
Last one is correct.
Seriously? Jake sighed. Well, fuck me.
You would have been utterly fucked indeed, Minaga said cheerily. And it was honestly kind of hard to get that 5-second timing down every time.
That's right. That entire cooldown period had been entirely self-imposed. Jake could already imagine it. A Minaga repeatedly using combination magic spells without any pause in between, potentially even using more than one at once, would be completely impossible for their party, and perhaps any party. Considering his self-imposed cooldown, it was entirely feasible he'd also slowed down the casting speed and had likely completely avoided his most potent spells altogether. It only made sense, considering he was a god. If Minaga had not been doing freeform casting but instead using actual skills, Jake guessed many, if not all, of the combination spells would have been at least ancient or legendary rarity, with the strongest ones approaching mythical. That he would also have actual mythical skill level magic and even beyond was only to be expected.
Ultimately, one of the reasons the system doesn't allow anyone to die on this floor is because of the inherent unfairness of the challenge, not just the expected difficulty, Minaga explained. If I decided that I didn't like someone and went all out to kill them, or if I was bribed by some faction to kill other young talents, things would get bad real fast. The system put in a preemptive measure to avoid that ever happening.
Jake slowly nodded. He, and likely most of the others, had already guessed this was the reason for the special rule of no deaths.
But I did actually kind of screw up once during the fight,
Minaga said, scratching the back of his head.
That last death explosion was a bit over the top and not really a part of the script. I just thought you'd also cheated, using that weird poison thing on me. That was totally cheating, by the way.
Wow, Jake said. I am shaken. Shaken, I tell you. How dare you accuse me of cheating when I am the beacon of honesty and fairness in all of my endeavors?
I felt the presence of the malefic viper from your damn mouth, Minaga shot back.
Done through entirely legitimate and normal means.
Based on your track record, cheating is normal to you,
Minaga said, refusing to back down. Oh wow, great argument. The Sword Saint raised a hand to cut in. Nothing about me cheating by using my transcendence?
No, that one is okay and not cheating. Maybe if you had fully used it, I would have maybe called you a cheater, but as things are, only this guy with his stupid bloodline is the cheater.
You know, Jake said, I never thought you would be a sore loser.
We literally just discussed how I, the great Minaga, held myself back to not accidentally squash you into paste, with the system even recognizing I am too awesome to be allowed to kill you,
Minaga said with a deadpan face. Excuses, excuses, Jake said, waving him off. Minaga glared at Jake, but didn't say anything more before the dryad in the room spoke up.
Excuse me, but did you retrieve this reward yourself, or was it generated by the system?
Dina was looking down at her box with the branch from this emerald forest.
Good question,
Minaga said, perking up again.
I got everything myself. Well, one of me did. For Nevermore, the system only helps that much, as it is ultimately a created dungeon rather than a natural one, so...
Casual conversation continued as Minaga stayed and chatted with them for a while, sharing tales of how he had obtained many rewards that he had either already given out or was still saving. However, in the end, the unique lifeform couldn't stay forever. They had completed Minaga's labyrinth after all, and he was just there to give out loot. All good things had to come to an end, and Minaga appeared kind of sad as he looked at them with melancholy.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that despite our differences when it comes to the definition of cheating, it has been a pleasure having you experience my labyrinth. You are all pretty damn good seeds and have bright futures ahead of you, no matter how infuriating you may be. Either way, I hope you all have a wonderful descent going forward. Who knows, we might even meet again, if not in Nevermore, then the vast world beyond.
Minaga smiled as he stood up, bowed, and threw them all a final snicker.
There are quite a few of me out there after all.
With those words, Minaga disappeared in a final flash of light, forever the showman. Casper hid away and prepared as the two pinnacle beings fought each other, the ground below them utterly torn up from their constant exchange of attacks. Azal the Ghost King fought the third phase Minaga in a nearly equal duel, though he was slowly losing out. Luckily, Maltrax the Beastkin Risen was also there to provide support by occasionally striking from odd angles and making sure Minaga could not launch any major attacks. Azal was truly a monster in the clash, moving with incredible speed as his large ghostly blade cut through the darkness of space in an eerie pattern. The Blight energy burned on his body, making him look like an avatar of the Blight Father himself, allowing him to even push back Minaga and land blows. He had needed to consume many spirits to reach that state, but it was worth it as long as they won. The lank abomination and the Banshee woman had both been thrown out due to taking lethal damage, leaving only 3 people left to fight in the final phase. The Banshee had been eliminated during the phase where they split up, and the abomination during this third phase, lost to one of Minaga's major spells after the rest of them had been thrown into the mini-labyrinth cubes. Seeing as the Banshee had functioned partly as their healer, it wasn't overly surprising she had been unable to hold on, but the abomination had been a surprise, as he had effectively been their tank. During the phase where they had been split up, it had been pretty difficult for him, too, forcing Casper to use his blight form and spend the entire time trying not to die. He'd gone through all of his pre-prepared traps to slow down the Minaga clone long enough for Azal to arrive, and together they'd quickly finished off the clone, with Casper's traps even managing to do some damage. Azal had wanted to help the Banshee first, but had been too late. Maltrax had handled her phase herself, making it clear she was the second strongest. Fighting continued between Azal and Minaga, and Casper did all he could to not allow Minaga to catch him out, as he knew he was the weakest, and Casper did have to admit that the beams from the stars above were quite hard to dodge. Only his link with Lyra helped him stand a chance, as he was effectively two beings in one. One had to remember that Lyra was not a normal Blight Wraith, but one created personally by the Blightfather himself. She was linked to Casper in a bond that made her something akin to a guardian, yet her own being. Casper had no idea how it all worked, and frankly, he didn't care.
Are you ready?
Casper asked Lyra as Minaga unleashed a major spell, making the stars above shimmer and descend in light beams upon Azal, forcing him to pull out a massive shield resembling a skull.
Let's show him,
Lyra's cheerful voice echoed in his mind. Casper smiled. His weapon was ready, and Lyra had completed her own preparations. Lifting the large wooden stake that resembled a spear, Casper prepared to throw it as his blight form began to fade. While the ghostly flames that embraced his body moved from him onto the wooden stake, Lyra embedded parts of herself into the weapon, amplifying it further. Without hesitation, Casper threw. Dark runes of pure curse energy pulsed across the stake as it flew through the air, the greenish blight energy invading it mid-flight and making its cursed runes glow in an eerie light.
Heh, you really think I didn't know you were charging up a big one?
Minaga yelled as he turned, ready to block the stake. Right as he did, Maltrax let out a ghastly howl. A massive projection appeared above her, depicting a white and black wolf howling towards the sky. For a brief moment, a rotting moon appeared, and the entire world seemed to stand still. Minaga couldn't move for that brief moment, during which the wooden stake flew straight by his staves and pierced his chest. Before he could do anything more, Azal's sword slammed into the stake, embedding it further. The blight energy and curse energy burst forth, igniting the unique life form's entire being. Cursed runes spread all over his form as Azal took advantage of the curse's restraining effect. Maltrax also soon joined in on the assault, and not long after, Casper saw Minaga stumble back with all the magic on him fading, and then his aura of life disappeared. Casper stopped pushing the power of the curse from his hidden position and sighed, utterly spent. Lyra didn't reply, having passed out from overexertion. Yet he felt like there could have been more to the fight.
We missed some secret final hidden phase, didn't we?
Casper questioned as he saw the boss fading away.
You did,
Minaga's fading form said.
Wait, now it isn't a secret hidden phase anymore.
He disappeared midway through the words as Casper and the others got the kill notification. A moment later, they were teleported to the in-between room, where they reunited with the two party members who had taken lethal blows. Not long after, they got their notifications from completing the fight, and even if Casper knew it was damn good, he saw that Azal looked slightly disappointed. 40th floor completed, 400 Nevermore points earned. Grand achievement earned. Complete the true ending event by defeating a fully empowered Minaga. 7,500 Nevermore points earned. Due to completing a grand achievement, you will receive a 15% multiplier to all Nevermore points at the final calculation. His disappointment was helped by Minaga appearing and handing out loot soon after. Azal got a mythical rarity natural treasure, while the rest of them got extremely high-quality legendary rewards. As Casper was admiring his own loot and mentally getting over the grand revelation that Minaga was actually a god, he couldn't help but wonder why he had never heard of Minaga before. If he was a god, it just felt weird that his name wasn't more well-known. Or, well, Casper could see him being a bit much, so maybe people just didn't like to talk about him. Chapter 56. Nevermore, a Viper's Assessment.
Were you nervous?
The dragon god in humanoid form asked, as he looked at the black-scaled god sitting across from him.
Your chosen did look to be in trouble quite a few times there. He was lucky his teammates were able to assure their victory.
Velastramaz looked at the worm god, who clearly enjoyed watching the recording. Yes, recording. A live feed was all well and good, but Jake knew when they were watching using that. With a recording, he would only know one person was looking while remaining unaware of all those who saw the recorded footage. It was a great workaround the Viper had noticed and begun taking advantage of a long time ago.
If we hadn't won, I would have been disappointed, though I do question if perhaps the difficulty has spiked more than in previous years, Velas wondered.
Hey, I was being totally fair and equal,
The third person chimed in, sounding incredibly offended at the notion that he had upped the difficulty. It was naturally Minaga, the creator of the floors, though this version of him was of the divine variety. Viper shook his head.
I never said you weren't fair, just that the difficulty has grown.
Maybe a bit,
Minaga admitted.
And all right, you do have a point that not all challenges are equal, but I have to hold myself back too much for total equality to be possible, and slight variations can happen, you know? Or are you telling me to never have fun and do stuff like my little duel with the swordsman?
The Viper looked at the worm god.
Have I complained about anything? Have I proposed any